Elon Musk sat in his sleek, minimalist office, scrolling through a series of messages on his phone. As usual, the world outside seemed to be moving at a pace faster than anyone could keep up with. But today, something felt different. A transaction that should have been routine had just hit a major snag. Musk had always been known for handling his business with finesse, but this time, something was off. He had been attempting to transfer a large sum of money to a bank for one of his latest projects, a new venture that he had high hopes for. After all, when you have the financial backing of someone like Musk, every deal should be simple, right? Not so. The bank, known for its high-profile clientele and strict protocols, had rejected the transaction without giving a clear explanation. The rejection wasn't the part that bothered him. After all, Musk had faced hurdles in business before, but this felt personal. The automated email was cold, unhelpful, and lacked the usual professionalism he was accustomed to from banks of this caliber. Musk wasn't one to back down from a challenge, but this wasn't just any challenge. This felt like a statement. He leaned back in his chair, the tension building in his chest. His mind began racing, trying to piece together why this was happening. He could feel the familiar pressure creeping in. Musk picked up the phone, dialing the number for the bank's account manager. The line rang twice before someone picked up. "Mr. Musk, it's good to hear from you," the voice on the other end said, a bit too cheerful for Musk's liking. "I need answers," Musk replied, his tone cold and sharp. "Why was my transaction declined?" There was a long pause. Musk could almost hear the other person swallowing their nervousness. "Well, sir, I'm afraid the reason for the rejection is internal," the voice hesitated. "We just need to make sure everything is in order before we proceed." Musk's eyes narrowed. "Internal," he repeated, his voice laced with incredulity. "I've been in business long enough to know when something's not adding up. I want an explanation now." He could hear papers rustling on the other end as if the account manager was shuffling through a pile of notes, looking for something that could help explain the situation. There was nothing but silence before the response came, low and cautious. I don't have all the details, sir. I'm afraid you'll need to speak with our senior management team for more information." Musk gritted his teeth. He hated being kept in the dark. This was no ordinary delay, it was a deliberate action. Someone in that bank didn't want him to move forward. After a brief exchange, Musk hung up the phone, a bitter taste in his mouth. He stared out the window, his gaze drifting across the sprawling city below. His mind churned. What was this about? Why would a top-tier bank, a bank that had worked with some of the wealthiest individuals in the world, suddenly decide to block one of the most influential entrepreneurs of the decade? Was it personal? Or was there a deeper power play unfolding in the shadows of the financial world? Before he could dive further into his thoughts, his assistant walked into the room with a phone in hand. "Mr. Musk, there's someone from the bank who insists on speaking with you," she said, her tone hesitant. Musk's jaw tightened. "Put them through." The phone clicked, and a new voice, smoother, more authoritative, came through the line. "Mr. Musk, I'm Alan Thomas, Senior Vice President at the bank. I understand you're having some issues with your recent transaction. Let's discuss how we can resolve this." Musk's eyebrow arched. "Resolve it? Alan, what I'm more interested in is why this happened in the first place." There was a silence on the other end. "Mr. Musk, I assure you, this matter is being looked into. You are a highly respected client." "Cut the pleasantries," Musk interrupted. "What's really going on here? This doesn't feel like a simple banking issue." Alan hesitated, then spoke in a lower tone, almost as though he was trying to gauge how much Musk would tolerate. "Mr. Musk, there are internal concerns we must address before proceeding with such large transactions. It's just a precautionary measure." Musk leaned forward in his chair, eyes narrowing. "Precaution? You're telling me that I, Elon Musk, need to be precautioned against a simple transaction? That's funny. There was a shift in the conversation, a coldness in Alan's voice that suggested he knew more than he was willing to admit. But instead of continuing the conversation, he simply ended it with a vague promise, "I'll have someone from the executive team reach out soon." The call ended abruptly. Musk sat there, frozen in thought, as the implications of the conversation swirled around him. This wasn't just a bank rejecting a transaction. This was a challenge, a message to him, in the only way they knew how to speak to someone like him. He knew then that this wasn't just about money or business anymore. Something bigger was at play, and he intended to figure it out, no matter what it took. But first, he had to decide what his next move would be. And Musk, as anyone who knew him well would attest, wasn't someone to let a challenge go unanswered. "Maybe," he muttered under his breath, "I should show them how serious I am." He reached for his phone again, his fingers poised to make a call that would change everything. The following day, Elon Musk wasn't in the mood for the usual tech meetings or Tesla updates. Instead, he was consumed by a growing unease. The more he thought about the bank's rejection, the more the situation felt personal. Musk didn't take rejection well, and for someone who had become accustomed to altering the trajectory of entire industries, this pushback wasn't going to fly. The usual calm of his office had turned into a cauldron of frustration. His assistant had been trying to get his attention about a potential partnership with SpaceX, but Musk's mind was somewhere else entirely. With his hand resting on the phone, his fingers drummed a rhythmic beat against the wood of his desk. He had waited long enough. A thought crossed his mind. He knew he couldn't let this go. What was the point of amassing all that wealth and power if the world's financial institutions were going to treat him like just another client? Musk wasn't just another rich guy. He was a man who'd sent rockets to space, revolutionized transportation, and redefined the way we viewed energy. This was a game of influence, and if the banks wanted to play hardball, he could play harder. Musk picked up the phone and dialed the number for the bank's executive team. The call was routed through several departments before he finally got someone on the line who seemed to have enough seniority to give him answers. "Mr. Musk, thank you for reaching out again. This is Sarah Green from the executive office," the voice said, somewhat tight, as though rehearsed. "How can I assist you today?" Musk's voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "Sarah, I don't need to go through any more runarounds. I need to know why my transaction was rejected and what exactly is going on behind the scenes." There was a long pause, longer than expected. Musk didn't like silence. It usually meant people were scrambling for a good enough excuse, or worse, they were hiding something. "We're investigating the matter internally," Sarah replied slowly, the words coming out like a rehearsed script. "It's not a reflection on you, Mr. Musk, but more of a procedural review. The decision was made to ensure all parties are protected." Musk could feel his patience starting to thin. Protected? Protected from what, exactly? I'm not some random investor. This is a significant deal with clear backing. I've been nothing but transparent. "I understand," Sarah responded, trying to diffuse the tension. "But as I said, these are internal matters. The senior management team will be in touch with you shortly. We don't want you to feel." "I don't need your don't feel talk," Musk interrupted, now visibly irritated. "I want action. I want answers. I'll expect a call from your team by the end of the day, or this will escalate." With that, Musk ended the call, his mind racing. He wasn't going to wait around for bureaucratic nonsense. If he had to force their hand, he would. There was power in money, yes, but there was even more power in making people feel small in their own turf. He glanced out the window again, a familiar look in his eyes. Elon Musk wasn't used to losing, and he wasn't about to start now. The call that changed everything. Within hours, Musk got what he had been waiting for. A call came through from Alan Thomas, the senior vice president who had spoken to him the day before. Musk's stomach churned with the anticipation of what was to come. "Mr. Musk," Alan's voice came through the phone with an air of caution. "I believe we owe you an explanation regarding the issue you raised earlier." "Glad to hear it," Musk replied, his voice flat. "You've got 5 minutes to convince me this was all just a misunderstanding." Alan hesitated. "It's not a misunderstanding. There are concerns at the top levels of the bank about the nature of your transaction. To be blunt, we weren't comfortable processing the transfer without a full review." "Concerns? What kind of concerns? This isn't a charity case." "I'm not asking for a handout," Musk retorted, his frustration mounting. "If this is about something personal, I suggest you just say it." Another long pause followed. When Alan finally spoke again, his voice was laced with an uncomfortable truth. "It's about control, Mr. Musk. There are individuals at the bank who are not entirely comfortable with the level of influence you wield. They feel that, with the way things are progressing in your various ventures, you're challenging the very foundations of the financial system. It's a power struggle, and we can't ignore the dynamics at play here." Musk's blood ran cold, but his expression remained unfazed. He was used to being a disruptor, but now the stakes felt higher. "You're telling me the bank is worried about me?" He let out a humorless laugh. "So, you reject my transactions because you think I'm too powerful for you? That's what this is about?" "Not exactly," Alan stammered. "But you must understand, there are risks in every transaction. If things go wrong, the reputational damage could be catastrophic for the bank. We need assurances that your dealings won't destabilize our standing." Musk's anger bubbled to the surface. "This is about fear, isn't it? Fear of change. Well, I'm not in the business of coddling institutions that are too afraid to adapt." Without giving Alan a chance to respond, Musk continued, "I'm done playing your games. If you want to prove you're serious about this, then I suggest you start treating me like the client I am. Or, if you prefer, I'll take my business elsewhere. I have plenty of other options." The call ended abruptly. Musk leaned back in his chair, his mind made up. This wasn't just a minor inconvenience. This was a declaration of war, a war between the old guard of finance and the new era of innovation that he was leading. And if they wanted a fight, they were about to get one. The game was on. Elon Musk didn't wait around for a call back. If anything, the bank's attempt to play the wait-and-see game had only fueled his resolve. He had been in this kind of battle before, when big corporations or institutions tried to hold back progress simply because they feared the future. But Musk wasn't just a businessman, he was a force of nature. By the next morning, his decision was made. Musk wasn't going to play by their rules anymore. He wasn't going to sit back and wait for them to get their act together. If they wanted control, he'd show them what it looked like when he took full control. He gathered his team, all the top lawyers and advisors, and informed them of his new plan. The atmosphere was tense, as always when Musk laid out one of his ambitious projects. But this time, it wasn't about rockets or electric cars, it was personal. "We're going to buy the building," he told them flatly. The words hung in the air, thick with implication. One of his top legal advisors, Anna, raised an eyebrow. "The whole building? Elon, are you sure about this? This could get complicated. The bank's headquarters is a major asset. They might not take kindly to being outbid for something they consider their own turf." Musk leaned forward, his voice unwavering. "That's the point. If they want to play these games, we'll take their foundation away from them. Let them see what it looks like when you try to block someone like me." The plan was simple. Musk's team would make an offer that the bank wouldn't be able to refuse, an offer that would force the bank to confront the fact that Musk had all the power, not them. It wasn't just about the building, it was about showing the bank, and everyone else, that he wasn't someone to be pushed around. Negotiations turned to gamesmanship. The next few days were a blur of high-stakes meetings, property evaluations, and legal hurdles. Musk's team moved quickly, and soon they had an agreement in place with the owners of the building to purchase the entire property. The asking price was astronomical, but money was never the issue for Musk. The real challenge was dealing with the bank's high-ranking officials who were desperate to maintain control. The tension escalated as the day of the final negotiation drew closer. Musk's reputation as a disruptor wasn't just confined to technology, it extended to every industry he touched. And now, it was time to see if the bank was ready to face the consequences of their arrogance. Sarah Green, the executive from the bank who had spoken with Musk earlier, called him again. This time, there was no pretending. She sounded worn out, as if she knew what was coming but wasn't ready to face it. "Mr. Musk, I hope we can discuss this matter more thoroughly," she said, her voice tentative. "You've made your intentions clear, but we'd like to avoid any more escalation. Let's meet and come to a mutual understanding. What's your next step here?" Musk's reply was sharp. "My next step is simple. I'm buying your building. All of it. It's a done deal. I hope you're ready to see what happens when someone with real power takes over." Sarah paused, clearly thrown by his bluntness. "You don't understand the consequences of your actions, Elon. This could mean the end of any relationship you have with our institution, and I doubt that's something you want." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Musk shot back. "What I don't understand is how you thought it was a good idea to block me in the first place. If you want to maintain control, you better start looking at things from my side. Because right now, I'm the one calling the shots." The call ended with a sharp click, and Musk smiled to himself. He could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on the bank, the realization that they were about to lose far more than just a deal. The game was shifting, and Musk was in the driver's seat. The tipping point. The final confirmation came just hours later. Musk had successfully negotiated the deal. The bank, whether it liked it or not, was now under his influence in a way they hadn't anticipated. The building that housed the headquarters of the bank would no longer be theirs. It would now belong to him. Musk's team began making the necessary preparations for the next step. He was already planning to walk through the doors of that building, but he wasn't doing it as just another visitor. He would be a reminder, a living testament to the power of innovation over tradition, the power of a single person to disrupt and change the world. As the news spread, a ripple of unease passed through the ranks of the bank's employees. They could feel the shift, and soon whispers of Musk's intentions started to circulate. The higher-ups, who had thought they could control him, were now scrambling to figure out how to salvage what they could from the situation. But as the story broke, something unexpected began to unfold. Within hours of the announcement, a group of senior staff members began tendering their resignations. They were leaving in droves, disillusioned and uncomfortable with the rapid changes that Musk's actions would inevitably bring. Some saw it as a sign of power, an early warning for those who might challenge him. Others simply couldn't stomach the idea of working for someone who had the ability to tear down an institution without blinking an eye. It was a mass exodus, a shift in power that signaled the beginning of the end for the bank's dominance. Musk leaned back in his chair, looking out over the city once again. He had started something much bigger than just buying a building. This wasn't about money. It wasn't even about the bank. It was about control over an entire system that had tried to box him in, and now he had turned the tables. The question now was, what would the bank do next? But for Musk, it didn't matter. The game was already over. He had won. The atmosphere in Musk's headquarters had shifted in the days following his purchase of the bank's building. There was an air of palpable excitement, mixed with an undercurrent of uncertainty. His team was buzzing with plans, how to repurpose the building, how to rebrand it, how to send a message to the financial world that no one was safe from disruption, not even institutions like this one. Elon Musk was a master of turning challenges into opportunities, and his latest move was no exception. The building that once represented the heart of a financial empire was now a symbol of Musk's power and influence. A place that once stood for the status quo was about to become the cornerstone of something far more ambitious. But it wasn't just about making a statement. It was about showing the world that change could come from anywhere, even from an outsider who didn't play by the usual rules. The fact that senior employees had resigned in droves after his announcement was exactly what he'd expected. Institutions like this bank relied on their ability to control people, control their assets, their futures, their livelihoods. But Musk had taken that power away in a single move. The press gets wind of it. News outlets were quick to pick up on the story. Headlines across the world screamed about Elon Musk's latest power play. Some saw it as a calculated move, a genius-level maneuver that showed his dominance in the business world. Others criticized it as reckless, a dangerous game that threatened the stability of the very institutions that kept the economy functioning. Regardless of the angle, the world was watching. The building, located in the heart of the city, quickly became a symbol of Musk's influence. Reporters camped out in front of the structure, eager for a glimpse of the man who had taken down one of the world's most powerful financial institutions in a matter of days. The media frenzy was nothing new for Musk, but this was different. This wasn't just about technology. This wasn't just about SpaceX or Tesla or even Neuralink. This was about the very fabric of corporate power, and Musk had decided to unravel it. He found himself in a series of interviews, fielding questions from the press about his motivations. The questions ranged from the strategic to the philosophical. Some asked whether this was just another power grab. Others wanted to know how it would affect his other ventures. "What do you hope to achieve by buying the bank's headquarters, Mr. Musk?" one reporter asked, microphone in hand. Musk smiled, leaning back in his chair. "I'm not trying to achieve anything. I'm just showing them what happens when the old guard tries to stand in the way of progress. People think they can control everything. Well, not anymore." He was blunt, as always, but his words hit the mark. The message was clear: the financial world had underestimated him, and now he was making them pay for it. Inside the bank. Back at the bank, things were falling apart. The senior staff members who had resigned were just the beginning. Word of Musk's move had sent shockwaves through the ranks. Employees, from the lowest levels to the highest, were left to wonder what would happen next. Some had been with the bank for decades, their entire careers tied to its success. The thought of their institution crumbling, falling apart at the hands of an outsider like Musk, was enough to drive them to resign. Alan Thomas, the senior vice president who had spoken with Musk earlier, was among the few still holding on. But even he could feel the pressure mounting. The executives were scrambling, trying to figure out how to contain the damage, but every attempt to regain control seemed to backfire. Musk had disrupted their foundation, and they were unsure how to respond. "Sarah, what's the latest?" Alan asked as he paced around his office, his mind racing. Sarah Green, who had become a reluctant spokesperson for the bank, was sitting at her desk, going through a mountain of emails. "Alan, it's getting worse. More employees are resigning by the hour. The public is turning against us. We're being painted as weak, as an institution that can't handle the new world. I don't know how much longer we can hold this together." Alan's hand tightened into a fist. "I knew Musk was dangerous, but this is a whole new level. He's not just playing the game, he's rewriting the rules." They both knew what this meant. The financial world was never going to be the same. Musk had shaken the system to its core. And as the bank's executives tried to figure out their next move, one thing was clear: they couldn't win this fight without making a drastic change. Musk's next move. Musk didn't sit back and wait for the bank to come to him. He had made his point, but he wasn't done yet. He had built his empire on the idea that innovation was the key to the future. And now, he intended to take that principle to the next level. He began drawing up plans for what would eventually become a new hub for innovation, a center of progress that would not just house his businesses but also invite others from all industries to join him in reshaping the future. The building he had purchased would become more than just a symbol of power, it would become a beacon for those who dared to think differently, who saw the world not as it was, but as it could be. Musk's vision for the building was grand, a space for collaboration, a center for bold new ideas, and a physical manifestation of everything he had worked for. He had been toying with the idea of creating a new kind of corporate structure, one that wasn't bogged down by bureaucracy, one that didn't stifle creativity but actively fostered it. But as he plotted his next steps, something unexpected happened: more resistance. Not from the bank, by now, they had backed off, fearful of provoking him further. But from within the tech community. The very people who had once seen Musk as their hero were now questioning his methods. They didn't understand why he had targeted the bank in the first place. Some called it petty, others said it was a distraction from his more meaningful projects. Musk couldn't help but smile. He knew what they didn't: this was never about the bank. It was about shaking the tree, about proving that the old world wasn't going to stand in his way. And if people didn't understand that, well, he wasn't about to lose any sleep over it. The building was now his. The message was out there. And the world was watching. The real question was, what would happen when the dust finally settled? Only time would tell. The city was buzzing. It wasn't just the media anymore, or the tech world trying to make sense of Elon Musk's latest bold move. The entire financial sector was on edge. For years, the banks and their sprawling empires had reigned supreme, dictating the flow of money, setting the pace of the economy, and, ultimately, shaping the world's future. But Musk's acquisition of their most sacred ground, the bank's headquarters, was more than just a shakeup, it was a full-on earthquake. Behind closed doors, the bank's remaining executives were scrambling to regain control. In a desperate attempt to save face, they began sending out press releases and making public statements, claiming that the purchase had no real impact on their business or operations. They were trying to downplay the whole affair, as though Musk's actions were just a passing nuisance. But deep down, they knew the truth: Musk had exposed their weakness, and there was no going back. As the weeks passed, Musk was unbothered by the flurry of media attention. In fact, he seemed to relish in it. He knew that the more the world watched, the more pressure would mount on the bank, and that would only serve to work in his favor. Inside the building he had purchased, things were already taking shape. Workers and designers were tearing down old walls, ripping out outdated equipment, and laying the foundation for what Musk envisioned would be the future of business. The headquarters, once a place of corporate power and tradition, was quickly morphing into a hub of innovation and bold new ideas. It was a place where traditional business practices would be flipped on their head, where collaboration would take precedence over bureaucracy, and where every employee would have the opportunity to challenge the status quo. Musk wasn't just trying to disrupt the financial world, he was planning to revolutionize how business itself was conducted. The building was his canvas, and he was ready to paint his masterpiece. But while Musk was focused on transforming the space, trouble was brewing elsewhere. The reactions from the tech community were mixed, with some applauding Musk's audacity, while others began to question his methods. Voices of dissent. Among those questioning Musk's actions was Sam Rodriguez, a well-known tech entrepreneur who had long been a vocal supporter of Musk's work. Sam had been one of the early investors in Tesla and had even collaborated with Musk on some early space projects. But recently, he found himself growing more and more uncomfortable with Musk's relentless push to reshape everything in his path. "I don't know, man," Sam said one evening, as he sat across from his old friend Mark. "I've been thinking a lot about Musk's latest stunt, and I'm just not sure it was the right move. I get that he wants to disrupt the status quo, but it feels different. It's personal, and I don't think it's going to end well." Mark, who had always been more pragmatic, nodded thoughtfully. I hear you, Sam. But you know Musk, he doesn't care about making friends or playing nice. He's always been about doing things his own way, even if it ruffles feathers. But this is bigger than just a corporate takeover. He's showing the world that power can be wielded in ways we've never seen before. I know, Sam sighed. And that's what scares me. He's playing a dangerous game, and I'm not sure how this one ends. What happens when you disrupt the financial world this way? Are we prepared for the fallout? Sam wasn't alone in his concerns. Other voices in the tech world were starting to echo similar sentiments. Musk's daring move had attracted both admiration and fear. While many admired his ability to think beyond the conventional boundaries, there was growing unease about the potential consequences of his actions. A new wave of innovation. Despite the doubts swirling around him, Musk pressed forward with his plans for the building. He was determined to show that his way of doing business was the future. The building, now fully under his control, was to become the headquarters of a new kind of corporation, a space where creativity, radical ideas, and unconventional thinking would be encouraged at every turn. He brought in experts from various industries to consult, from AI specialists to designers, to create a place that would inspire the next wave of technological advancement. No longer would employees be bogged down by the old methods of corporate hierarchy. Musk's vision was clear, a flat structure, no more power plays, just collaboration. The building would house everything from cutting-edge research labs to open spaces where employees could work on projects that might disrupt not only the tech world but every industry in between. It was a gamble, sure. But Musk had never been one to shy away from risk. The world had seen it before. He gambled on electric vehicles when no one else would, and now Tesla was one of the most valuable companies on the planet. He gambled on space travel, and SpaceX was now a driving force in the future of space exploration. And now, he was betting on this, a place where new ideas could bloom freely and power structures could be dismantled, brick by brick. The staff's fear. While the media speculated about Musk's next big move, a different kind of tension was building within the walls of the newly restructured building. The employees, those few who hadn't yet resigned, had a front-row seat to Musk's vision in the making. Some were excited about the prospects, eager to see what innovations might come out of this new collaborative environment. Others, however, were more wary. There were whispers among the staff that the freewheeling, fast-paced environment Musk was creating could be too much for some to handle. Many employees who had worked in the financial world for years were used to a more structured, predictable corporate environment. The idea of working in a place where the rules were constantly being rewritten was terrifying for some. Sarah Green, who had once been one of the bank's most trusted executives, was still holding on as a consultant for Musk's team. She had no intention of returning to the bank, but she was increasingly disillusioned with the new direction Musk was taking. She wasn't sure if this was a genius move or a reckless one, and it left her in a constant state of internal conflict. As she walked through the newly renovated building one afternoon, she overheard two junior staff members talking in hushed tones. "I don't know how much longer I can take this," one of them said. "Every day feels like we're on the edge of something big, but we don't know what it is or where it's headed. It's like we're being asked to bet everything on a vision that hasn't even been fully explained." The other employee nodded. "I get it. I don't know if I'm cut out for this. The pace is too fast, and the stakes keep getting higher. It's exciting, but also scary." Sarah couldn't help but overhear their concerns. She understood their fear. After all, she had been on the inside of that world, the world that now seemed to be slipping through her fingers. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that Musk was on to something that could change everything. And for better or worse, she was now part of it. The storm was gathering. The building was taking shape. And the world was about to watch as Elon Musk tried to rewrite the rules, one brick at a time. Weeks passed, and the building, once a symbol of power for the old guard, was transforming into something entirely new. The raw, exposed beams were a far cry from the polished, corporate facade that had once stood. Yet, it wasn't just the physical changes that were shifting. Something deeper was happening within the walls of that building, and within the minds of those who had chosen to stay. Sarah Green walked through the halls, now filled with new employees who had been handpicked by Musk's team. The once stuffy atmosphere was gone, replaced by a more dynamic energy. People were brainstorming, collaborating, and moving faster than she had ever seen in her years within the financial system. There was no hesitation. No waiting for approval. Every conversation felt like it had the potential to change the world. It was unlike anything Sarah had experienced before. But despite the excitement, a gnawing unease lingered within her. She had always been a part of a well-oiled machine, one that operated on tried-and-tested rules. But here, those rules had been shattered. Musk had come in and completely upended everything. The uncertainty, the lack of structure, it made her nervous. The battle for control. Across town, the executives of the old bank were still reeling from Musk's takeover. They had attempted to maintain the illusion of control by pushing back against the changes happening at their former headquarters, but the more they resisted, the more they seemed to crumble under the pressure. Alan Thomas had been trying to keep the bank afloat, working tirelessly with his colleagues to stabilize the institution, but it felt like trying to hold water in his hands. Every time they thought they had found a solution, the ground would shift again. Musk had already disrupted their financial dominance. Now, it seemed like he was disrupting their very identity. How long can we keep this up? Alan muttered one evening as he stared out of his office window, watching the city lights flicker below. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration growing. We can't keep pretending like this is business as usual. The world sees us as weak now. His right-hand man, David, looked up from his desk. We could try to fight back. Start a PR campaign, maybe get ahead of the narrative. Tell the world that Musk's plans are reckless, that we're the stable foundation people need. Alan sighed deeply, his gaze shifting back to the skyline. It's not going to work. People don't trust us anymore. And Musk, he's unpredictable. We can't fight him on his terms. They sat in silence, both men understanding that the foundation they had spent decades building was slipping away. Musk had changed the game, and they were left scrambling to catch up. Musk's vision comes to life. Back at the building, the renovations were nearing completion, and Musk's vision was starting to take shape in ways that no one could have predicted. The walls were adorned with innovation posters, the open spaces filled with creative hubs and lounges designed for impromptu brainstorming. The employees, though still adjusting to the chaos of change, were beginning to feel the pulse of something larger than themselves. Musk had always believed in the power of decentralization, of breaking down traditional corporate hierarchies. He had decided that, instead of focusing solely on one product or service, the building would house multiple projects, all working in parallel, each with the potential to disrupt entire industries. He called it the hub of the future. The idea was simple, yet profound, a space where every department was interconnected, where ideas could flow freely between teams, and where cross-industry collaboration was the norm. It was a gamble, a chance for Musk to push the boundaries of corporate infrastructure. Sarah couldn't help but feel the excitement growing within her as she moved through the hallways. The walls weren't just being redesigned, they were being filled with possibilities. The floor beneath her feet felt like a new foundation was being laid, not just for the building, but for the future of business itself. Musk was determined to show that the old world of corporate control was no longer necessary. His model would be faster, smarter, and more efficient. But as much as Sarah was captivated by the potential, a small voice inside her wondered if this was all too much. Could one man really change everything? The moment of truth. One afternoon, as Sarah sat in one of the newly designed meeting rooms, her phone buzzed with a text from Alan. It had been a while since she'd heard from him. They had kept their distance since the bank's downfall, but he had always been someone she could count on. "Meet me. We need to talk." Curious, Sarah agreed, and the two of them met later that evening at a small, dimly lit cafe. Alan looked exhausted, his suit rumpled as though he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were heavy with the weight of the ongoing battle, but there was something more in his gaze, something that made Sarah uneasy. "I've been thinking," Alan began, taking a sip from his coffee. "Maybe it's time for a new direction. Maybe we can't win this fight. Maybe we should join him." Sarah blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "Join him? Join Musk?" Alan nodded. "I've watched him carefully. He's not playing by the old rules, but that doesn't mean he's wrong. This building, this whole thing, it's a paradigm shift. We can either keep fighting a battle we're going to lose, or we can step aside and try to learn something from him." It was a moment of profound change. The same man who had once fought so hard to protect the bank's legacy was now considering abandoning it. And Sarah felt torn. The world she had known was slipping away, but was Musk really the answer? "What's stopping us from rebuilding something of our own?" she asked, her voice thick with uncertainty. Alan's eyes hardened. "There's no rebuilding. Not after what Musk's done. The financial world as we know it is gone. If we want to survive, we need to adapt. And right now, the best chance we have is to understand his vision, not fight against it." It was a decision that would change everything for Sarah. Would she continue fighting for the old ways? Or would she embrace the new, uncertain future Musk had set into motion? As they parted ways that night, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the storm was only just beginning. The emotional shift in her was undeniable. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about figuring out how to thrive in a world that Musk had changed forever. And as she walked away from the cafe, she couldn't help but wonder, had Elon Musk truly found the key to the future, or was he about to lead them all into chaos? The days that followed Sarah's conversation with Alan were filled with uncertainty. She couldn't shake the weight of what had been said, join Musk or be left behind. The more she thought about it, the more the idea of embracing Musk's vision felt both exciting and terrifying. She had spent her entire career within a well-established system that was now crumbling under the pressure of a new, unknown force. But the question remained, could Musk's unrelenting vision truly be the answer to the world's corporate and financial struggles? As she walked through the transformed building, Sarah felt the sense of possibility that had been missing for so long. The sterile, corporate halls were gone, replaced by a vibrant, fluid environment filled with innovation. People weren't just working at desks, they were brainstorming on whiteboards, having spontaneous meetings in open spaces, and, most of all, creating. She watched as employees across different departments collaborated, sharing ideas in ways she had never witnessed in her years at the bank. But with every passing day, Sarah also noticed something else, something darker. The staff's enthusiasm, at first palpable, was beginning to wane. It was subtle at first, just small murmurs behind closed doors and tired eyes as people returned from long, late nights of work. Even the new hires, who had been so eager to be a part of something revolutionary, were showing signs of strain. Musk had revolutionized the space, but the cost was starting to become clear, the pressure to innovate without structure, the lack of clear boundaries, and the constant push for perfection were taking a toll. No one had time to stop, think, or reflect. They were moving at an unrelenting pace, and it was beginning to break even the most dedicated employees. A fateful meeting. One afternoon, as Sarah sat in her office, she received a message from Elon Musk himself. It was a simple text, "I need to see you in the main conference room. Let's talk about the future." Her heart raced. This was it, the meeting that could change everything. When she entered the conference room, Musk was already there, leaning against the window, his eyes scanning the city below. He turned as she entered, a slight smile on his face. But there was something in his eyes that gave Sarah pause. it was as if he already knew what the conversation would be, but was waiting for her to say it. "Sarah," Musk said, his voice calm, but with an intensity that hinted at something much deeper. "How are you feeling about the changes?" She hesitated, unsure how to answer. She couldn't lie to him, she had always respected his boldness, his vision. But the truth was complicated. It's incredible, but it's also overwhelming. People are excited, but there's this undercurrent of exhaustion. It feels like we're constantly chasing the next big thing without stopping to think about what we've just built. Musk's expression didn't change. "Good. You're paying attention. It's been a whirlwind, hasn't it? But that's how innovation works. We move fast. It's the only way to disrupt the old systems." Sarah nodded, but the weight of her words pressed on her. "I get that. But I'm starting to wonder if we've sacrificed something essential in all this, something we can't get back. People need a break, Elon. They need space to think, to breathe." He walked over to her, a rare moment of seriousness on his face. "I know what you're saying. But this is bigger than us, Sarah. This is bigger than any one company. The world is changing, and if we don't keep pushing, someone else will come and take the lead. The old systems are too slow, too bloated. This pace? It's necessary." Sarah's mind raced. She understood the urgency in Musk's words. He was right, the world was moving faster than ever, and anyone who couldn't keep up would be left behind. But was that the only way forward? Was there truly no room for balance? "Do you ever stop to consider what happens when we push too hard?" she asked. "What happens to the people who can't keep up? What happens to them when they burn out?" Musk's face tightened, but he didn't look angry. Instead, it was as if a wall had come down, and she could see the full weight of his responsibility pressing on him. "I don't have the answers, Sarah. All I know is that we're building the future. There's no time for second-guessing." The resignation wave. The next few days were a blur of activity, but the tension in the air was undeniable. People began to resign in droves. Some left quietly, with little explanation. Others were more vocal about their frustrations, citing the impossible demands, the lack of personal time, and the relentless drive to always do more. Musk's vision was exhilarating, but it was also an exhausting marathon with no finish line in sight. Sarah watched as one by one, the key people she had worked with for years walked out the door. It was a tidal wave of resignation, a statement that Musk's revolution might have been too much, too fast, even for the most dedicated. But it wasn't just the employees who were leaving. The executives who had once held power within the bank, those who had been so adamant about keeping the old order intact, were now nowhere to be found. The boardroom was eerily silent, as the top brass had scattered to their own ventures, unwilling to accept the world Musk was creating. It was a feeling of collapse, of a great empire falling to pieces. The world that had once felt stable was now a chaotic mess of opportunity, risk, and uncertainty. Sarah's decision. One evening, Sarah stood in front of the window in her office, watching the city below. The lights twinkled like 1,000 possibilities, each one representing a different path she could take. She could leave, like so many others. She could walk away from this chaotic future that Musk was building and return to the safety of a corporate world that, while slow and predictable, had a sense of stability. But as she stood there, the weight of the decision pressing on her, she realized something: leaving wasn't an option anymore. The world was changing, whether she liked it or not. She couldn't simply go back to the way things were. The future had arrived, and it was up to her to decide whether she would be a part of it. Sarah turned away from the window, her decision clear. She wasn't going to leave. Not yet. There was something about Musk's vision that still sparked something deep inside her. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't easy, but it was alive. She had one final conversation with Elon, where she expressed her concerns but also shared her commitment to help make the vision a reality. She was in, fully and wholeheartedly. And with that, Sarah Green became part of the movement that would reshape the business world forever. The day Sarah committed to staying felt like a weight lifting off her shoulders, though it didn't make the work any easier. In fact, it was only the beginning. Elon Musk had been right about one thing: the world was changing at a pace that no one could predict, and anyone who wasn't prepared to run alongside it was destined to fall behind. But as Sarah dove deeper into Musk's world, she began to realize just how much more there was to consider. There was no going back now. The chaos, the pressure, the constant sense of being on the edge, it was all part of this strange new reality that Musk was crafting. And yet, there was something thrilling about it. The uncertainty no longer felt like a threat, but an opportunity. The weeks that followed were filled with late nights and early mornings, working alongside the new, eager staff that had taken the plunge into this new world Musk was creating. Sarah found herself in charge of managing a core project that would eventually become the heart of Musk's vision, a multi-use platform, an ecosystem where everything, from transportation to communications to finance, would intertwine seamlessly. It was a daunting task, but Sarah felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. The old days at the bank, those long, predictable hours in a cubicle, now felt like a distant memory. Here, in the newly renovated building, with its open spaces and constant flow of ideas, she was part of something greater. It was messy. It was unpredictable. And yes, it was exhausting. But every conversation, every project felt like it was contributing to a larger movement. The vision comes to life. Musk's vision was starting to take shape. The building was fully operational now, with teams working in harmony, often collaborating across departments and even industries. They weren't simply trying to fix old problems, they were building new ones to solve, innovating in ways that no one had anticipated. But the pressure was immense. As Sarah worked alongside the teams, she saw firsthand the effects of Musk's fast-paced work culture. People were burning out faster than she had imagined, and as exciting as the work was, the relentless drive for progress took its toll. It wasn't just about work anymore, it was about the survival of the company. There were no days off. There was no waiting for a perfect idea. If you didn't perform, you were out. The staff was fractured. Some had embraced Musk's chaotic brilliance, thriving in an environment where innovation was everything. Others, though, were crumbling under the constant stress. Sarah watched as several of her closest colleagues left, their resignation letters emailed in the dead of night. "I can't do this anymore," one of them had written. "I didn't sign up for this constant rush. It's not worth it." Her heart sank as she read the message. These were people she had once considered friends, mentors even. They had believed in the work, in the vision. But now, the reality of what Musk was asking from them had taken its toll. Sarah found herself questioning the price of progress. She had always believed in hard work and dedication, but where was the line? Was this world Musk had created truly sustainable? Could it last? Musk's unwavering resolve. One afternoon, Sarah met Musk in one of the now bustling common areas. As usual, he was moving at 100 miles an hour, his eyes scanning multiple things at once. But when he saw her approach, he paused for a moment. "Sarah," he said, his voice steady. "How's everything going?" She hesitated. "It's going, but people are struggling. We've got people leaving. Some aren't adapting to the pace. I'm worried we're pushing too hard." Musk's expression shifted slightly. It wasn't anger, but something close to frustration. "I know it's tough. I don't expect everyone to keep up. But the reality is, the world won't wait. We're on the edge of something huge, and if we don't keep moving, we'll be left behind. I can't slow down. Not now." Sarah understood that Musk's mind was wired differently. He didn't think the way most people did. He saw things from a 10,000-foot view, constantly thinking about the future. But at that moment, she realized how much was at stake, not just for the company, but for the people who were living through it. "We can't ignore the human element," Sarah replied quietly, "or we'll lose everything we've built." Musk looked at her, his eyes narrowing as if he were considering her words carefully. "You're right," he said, after a long pause. "We'll have to find a balance. But it's hard, Sarah. It's hard to slow down when we're on the cusp of changing everything. People are going to have to rise to the occasion." Sarah nodded, feeling a sense of both understanding and apprehension. "I get it. But maybe there's a way to keep pushing forward without burning everyone out." The turning point. That conversation was a turning point for Sarah. She realized that while Musk's vision had the potential to reshape the future, it wasn't invincible. The human side of the equation was just as important as the technological and financial side. Without people who were able to sustain their own well-being, the entire operation could fall apart. Determined to make a difference, Sarah gathered a group of team leaders who shared her concerns. Together, they began brainstorming ways to balance the intensity of Musk's drive with the need for self-care and recovery. They proposed implementing wellness programs, ensuring time off, and offering mental health resources. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. The first trial run of these initiatives was met with mixed reactions. Some embraced it, appreciating the chance to step back and recharge. Others, however, found it unnecessary, distracting even. They felt that slowing down would make them lose their edge. But for Sarah, it was a small victory. It was a sign that maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to continue the work without sacrificing everything in the process. A new path forward. As weeks turned into months, Sarah continued to work closely with Musk, pushing forward the vision while also advocating for the well-being of those who were working tirelessly to bring it to life. She learned to navigate the delicate balance between innovation and sustainability, knowing that the future they were building had to be as much about the people as it was about the products. And slowly, the culture began to shift. People were still working hard, but they also began to understand the importance of recovery. It wasn't an easy road, but Sarah was proud to see that change was possible, even in Musk's high-pressure world. By the end of the year, the building had become more than just a workplace. It had become a symbol of resilience, a space where innovation thrived, yes, but where humanity still had a place. Musk had created something extraordinary, and Sarah knew that they had only just begun to scratch the surface of what was possible. In the end, it wasn't just about technology or disruption. It was about people, and how far they were willing to go, not just for the company, but for each other. As Sarah walked out of the building one evening, she looked up at the towering structure. The city was still buzzing with life, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of peace. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape. And that, she realized, was exactly what Musk had always wanted, not just to disrupt the world, but to inspire those who dared to join him in the process. The future was no longer a distant dream. It was right here, waiting to be built. And Sarah was ready to keep moving forward, one step at a time. As Sarah stood at the building's front doors, looking out over the city skyline, she couldn't help but think about the journey that had brought her here. From her early days in the traditional banking world to the chaos and excitement of Elon Musk's empire, the transformation had been nothing short of monumental. She had witnessed the rise of a new era, one where progress came at a relentless pace, and yet, through it all, the importance of balance had begun to take root. The first signs of change, the shift in how people approached their work and their personal well-being, had started as a quiet ripple. But now, as she looked around, the atmosphere had shifted. The building, once a sterile monument to corporate hierarchy, had transformed into a thriving hub of innovation. People were still working hard, but there was a sense of purpose, a feeling of collective ownership over the work they were doing. They weren't just building products, they were building the future. In the weeks following the implementation of the new wellness initiatives, the response had been overwhelmingly positive. Some teams had even managed to find a rhythm, balancing their intense work schedules with the need to rest and recharge. The drive for innovation didn't stop, but it became more sustainable. The changes weren't perfect, and they weren't without their challenges, but for the first time in a long while, Sarah felt like there was hope that this new world Musk was creating could truly be something that lasted. Musk had been cautious but open to the changes. While he still pushed for progress, he had come to understand that the people behind his vision were just as important as the technology they were creating. There had been a few tough conversations, but Musk was learning, evolving just like everyone else. He was not a perfect leader, but his capacity to adapt, however slowly, was one of the things that kept this movement alive. A new perspective. On one particular morning, Sarah sat across from Elon in one of the newly designed lounges. The sun streamed through the windows, casting a soft light over the room. For the first time in a while, the conversation felt less tense. They weren't talking about deadlines or pressure to innovate. Instead, they were talking about the long-term impact of their work, the responsibility they had not only to their company but to the world at large. "I've been thinking," Elon said, looking out the window, his voice softer than usual. "Maybe I was too focused on pushing people to the edge. I see now that innovation isn't just about pushing boundaries. It's about creating something that can stand the test of time, something sustainable." Sarah nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. "I think we've learned a lot, Elon. It's about the journey as much as the destination. The world is changing, and we can't just rush into it without considering the people who will build it. I think we're starting to find that balance." There was a long pause, as if both of them were absorbing the gravity of the conversation. It was a rare moment of reflection for Musk, a sign that he had begun to understand something that was often lost in his tireless pursuit of progress. "I think we've come a long way," Musk said, turning back to face her. "And I'm starting to think that the future isn't just about technology. It's about how we make it work for people. If we don't take care of the human side, everything else falls apart." Sarah felt a weight lift off her chest. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a huge step forward, a sign that maybe, just maybe, Musk was ready to lead in a way that prioritized the well-being of his people. A changed company. As Sarah looked out over the bustling building, she saw something that had once seemed impossible. The once frantic energy that had ruled the office was now replaced by a kind of controlled excitement. People were still working at breakneck speeds, but now they had the tools, the time, and the space to be creative and thoughtful. They weren't just chasing progress for progress's sake. They were shaping something meaningful, something that could change the world for the better. Employees began to take pride in the culture that was evolving, knowing that their voices mattered. The sense of unity, of shared purpose, became the foundation of the company's success. People began to believe in something larger than themselves. They weren't just employees, they were pioneers on the front lines of a revolution. The product they were building, a seamless integration of technology, finance, and communication, was beginning to take shape. It was bold, it was new, and it was beginning to attract attention from all corners of the business world. But the excitement wasn't just about the product. It was about the people behind it. It was about the journey they had gone through to get there. Sarah's new role. As the company continued to evolve, so did Sarah. She had started out as an observer, someone who wasn't sure if she could keep up with the breakneck pace of Musk's world. But now, she was a key leader in shaping the direction of the company, helping to steer it toward a future that wasn't just about technology but also about the people who would use it. She became an advocate for the employees, ensuring their voices were heard in the decision-making processes. She worked with teams to create better systems for collaboration, communication, and, most importantly, personal well-being. It was a constant challenge, but it was also deeply rewarding. Sarah knew that their success depended not only on their ability to innovate but on their ability to care for the people who made that innovation possible. The future ahead. 1 year after Sarah had made the decision to stay, she stood once again in front of the building, looking out over the city. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow across the horizon. The world felt different now, less uncertain, more full of possibility. She had watched as the company transformed, as the employees found their rhythm, and as Musk, too, began to evolve into a more thoughtful and reflective leader. The future was still unpredictable, but it no longer felt like something to be feared. It felt like something to embrace. As Sarah took a deep breath, she knew there was still much work to be done. There would always be challenges. There would always be moments of doubt. But one thing was certain: the foundation they had built together, with all its struggles and triumphs, was strong. And from that foundation, anything was possible. She walked through the doors of the building, ready to face the future with hope and determination. The journey was far from over, but it had only just begun.